Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Pantheon, Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with Chanda's side of things. I am curious, at first I was curious we don't know about the logarithm side of things, like how many people they've got. Obviously, the big focus is on David and Lori. So we have Chanda, but that's obviously a completely different company, an Indian telecom company that was it something Alliance. They're the ones that have Chanda, which I was, I wasn't 100% sure how that was working, but I thought that's what that was. But this kind of like dives that even more, especially when Pope meets the head of that company and he wants to we should do an alliance because you're not the only game in town anymore, type of thing, which we'll get to in later, but. It's this really heartbreaking thing where Chanda is basically, obviously the point is to keep him in this loop where he basically doesn't realize he's dead. You keep enough going so that his mind doesn't recognize something's off. Including calls from, I'm assuming his mom, his mom, so that it's you need emotion, but not too strong of emotion. Strong emotions are what led to the David situation or the Lori situation. But at the very least, if Chanda, you want to give him enough love with a tad bit of annoyance to kind of keep it realistic enough to kind of ground him enough, because emotion keeps you productive. That was kind of the whole issue. That was the whole thing with David. He stopped being productive without the emotional element, but they gave him too much and he started remembering too much on his own, and that became the whole issue. So now it's happening to Chanda and seeing it happening over and over and over again. And he's writing obviously it's 15 seconds real world wise, but for him it feels like 12 days. And then they have that sick joke of actually it's only been one day because he's repeating the same day over and over again. There is no tomorrow, at least not relative to, it's the tomorrow he believes that happened yesterday, not that this is happening over and over again. So Chanda eventually gets an invader to his space. And at first I was like, is it Lori? And I was like, but why would she take on such a ghoulish form? Turns out it's not Lori. At the very least, it's one, maybe multiple people who were Chanda's predecessors. People who were also taken, Ajit ended up killing all these people to try and do what they did with Chanda, but I guess they were failures. I guess maybe they're people whose minds because the fact is, they look what they do, these clayish golems. They look like pale clay faces. So the question is, are they failed examples of some of their consciousness is there and maybe they were no longer useful so they got deleted, or because they might have just been this process isn't 100% foolproof, so maybe they're the examples of it kind of not working. Chanda's the example of it is working. I thought it was so creepy and eerie, especially when that one kind of popped through the glass. It was banging its head on the glass, and then it kind of popped through, and I love that effect. And then it kind of stretching around him and keeping him bound. Even the fact that he went flat like he was paper, I thought was kind of a neat aesthetic. But they make him realize this is what's going on. This is who you are. And so they're telling him, you need to be able to replicate yourself. So that's why I don't know if it's just one person who replicated himself multiple times. Because I don't think it's Lori, but it could be. Because David does talk about the fact that, Lori helped me break out. She got to me, helped me break out. And then all of a sudden it just stops all contact with me. It might be because this might be her, but I'm assuming the way they were talking about it, they're no, we're other people. It could be that Lori got to them to get to Chanda because it's she probably doesn't have access like they do because they're inside the system and they can slip in because they're probably it's a weird phrase to use, but they're kind of the ghost in the machine that they can probably pass through it a little bit easier than Lori could. Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe this is completely unrelated to Lori. I just feel the timing is just interesting that Lori just happens to disappear at the same time people are trying to reach out to Chanda, so. And I was kind of bummed when it seemed I was oh man, it sucks when everything kind of resets at the end, but then we get that reveal, he copied himself, and now it's cool, because if he keeps this up, anytime any type of spike happens, all they do is reset him, and I'm it's going to be a thing, it's not going to be a, Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat type of situation of you're learning, you'll remember. It's he won't. He's getting reset every time, so he won't remember. But I did, like I said, the slow process to it, because at first it's the pin drops, but then he eventually grabs it. It's it's breaking the matrix a little bit. But now it's a situation of like he fully breaks it and now he's escaping with the others and left a copy of himself behind. That way they think, oh, I'm up here still being productive. I'm curious, is his copy going to do anything, or is he actually just going to like slow roll the whole thing? Because if he slow rolls it, they're eventually going to notice like, okay, he was super productive before. What the hell is going on now? And then you're going to probably have the issue of them being like, wait, he's going missing. We got to find him. So it's going to be interesting to see where the whole Chanda thing ends up taking him, because that was like really heartbreaking. Not the only heartbreaking thing in this episode, too. There's also the whole thing with Caspian. Obviously, you know, Hannah witnessed, like, the complicated family situation he's got going on. And she's like, yo, like, what's happening there isn't normal. You should, like, you know, want to talk about it. And he's like, you're right. It's none of your business. It is, like, this thing of, like, it's your life, and when you get someone else on the outside peeking in, he even says later on, like, I was embarrassed. It's like, yeah, it's just kind of a hard thing to deal with. It's like being in that situation where, like, right, you have an abusive parent, and you're just kind of like, it's not necessarily embarrassed, but it's just more so like, I think maybe it's embarrassed in the regard of Caspian feels like he couldn't do anything. It's like, right, I should have long since done something, and the fact is I haven't makes him embarrassed about, maybe that's what he's referencing. But then we have the whole Renee and Carrie thing, which I thought was so fascinating, because the moment they're at the store looking for the hammer and stuff, I was like, wait, are they going to like, because I thought like she was going to kill Carrie and that was going to set everything in motion, because initially Caspian is looking into this whole thing. Like he keeps diving deeper and deeper, even to the point he opened up to his mom about the upload intelligence stuff. And then his mom brings it up to Pope. But Pope's like, yeah, it's on schedule. It's fine. We know everything he's looking up. It's fine. After tomorrow, it won't matter. I'm like, what's going down tomorrow? They're like, he's reaching this critical point that like once he hits here, it's all going to be different. Even telling Carrie or whatever that Renee was saying like, oh, like after tomorrow, you won't have to worry about it. That's why I was like, there's no way you're going to kill him. But I mean, like they might be that devoted to this cause. But that's what made, and especially when Renee was thinking about it, seems she had a relationship with Steven. I don't know, like, well, it seemed like it was beyond just intimate, like just like a sex thing. It seemed like it was like purely like emotionally intimate as well. But it immediately makes me think like, okay, so my previous theory is that I think Caspian is Steven. They're basically kind of rebooting him. Like there might not been enough of Steven left for them to upload. Because to be fair, the technology wasn't there. So either it's going to be one of two things. One, he's actually Steven's child and he doesn't know that. That was kind of one of my earlier theories. Or he actually is Steven, or whether they were just trying to like prepare him to be in a position to fill Steven's role, or whether it's a situation of, oh no, like they're actually going to like make him into Steven, because once again, either he's Steven and he just doesn't realize it and know that, or they're just going to make him into Steven. Those are like the wild theories I'm throwing out there, but they don't seem like completely out of left field anymore, because especially with that Renee thing and now the Carrie thing too, because Carrie was kind of like security or whatever, so he knew Steven, and I guess that was one of their, probably wasn't their first instance of meeting, but you know, that awkwardness of like, right, he came in after they ended up having sex and he's got to like get some papers filed. So, and the fact is they're trying to get details right, because she's like, oh, I don't like that hammer. He was like, that's why I immediately picked it. So they're setting up the scene once again, because we know that abusive relationship is all for show. Not sure why, but I guess it's to push him for whatever reason. They need him to be pushed into a certain direction, is all for his growth. And so even Carrie, when the time came, he's dedicated to this, but he couldn't hurt Renee, because I think because he knew what hurting Renee would mean. It'd mean giving up all of this, because I think regardless of it all, once again, you play house long enough, it's no longer a game. It's no longer just a mask anymore. It's kind of part of who you are. And this has been a part of Carrie for a long time, forever, because Caspian's like 18. So at the very least, the past 18 years, they've been really deep diving into this, playing this role as a family. And so I think he didn't want to hurt Renee, because it meant undoing everything. And Renee did it herself. Caspian snapped and beat the ever-living shit out of Carrie, and he ended up leaving. And now it's like Renee playing a role. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And Caspian's like, don't worry, I'm going to take care of us. And when he's driving, Renee's just kind of like, yeah, Carrie's like, I'm going to miss him. And Pope is like, you'll see him soon enough. So that's why I'm like, that's what makes me think like he is Steven. So it's like the connection of like, right, he is Steven, or rather it still could just be like you'll see him soon enough, because once he's become who he needs to be, then he'll be in a position that, you know, it'll all be worth it because you put him where he needs to be and you can all kind of be reunited again. You know, granted, and the ending where Carrie's just pulled over the side of the road, bawling his eyes out because he's like heartbroken because it's no longer an act anymore. Like, in a twisted, weird way, he enjoyed playing this role and now he has to give it up forever. He can never go back. It's done. It's over. So it's going to be interesting to see where things kind of go from there. Caspian in a whole... Obviously, I start getting into that territory where I'm like, I suspect everyone, because now I'm like, is Hannah part of this too? Because now it's like, oh, she's like, hey, like they're starting something, because she's like, oh yeah, I didn't want to just be friends, I wanted to be something more, so... And her noticing the bruises on his fist, probably realizing like, oh, he did something about it. But my thing is, her reaction is like probably being like, okay, it's understandable considering the circumstances, but now I'm also curious. Once again, you get suspicious of everyone in everyone's lives, so now you're like, okay, was this all part of some play? Like, is she part of this too? I don't think so, but I don't know. If Steven ends up being like, if that's why I'm like, there's no way. Because if I'm so scrambled for words saying this. If Caspian ended up being Steven, it'd be fucking weird considering it's like, oh yeah, like Renee played the role of your mother, considering Steven and her were intimate. So it's like, that's why I'm like, maybe that's why she's also playing the role of your mom, because she probably like, if you are, I mean, I keep saying like maybe you're his child. It's like, maybe we're dealing with a clone situation. I mean, we're dealing with like technological AI and uploading human intelligence. That I'm like, could it be that much of a stretch? No, I mean, cloning technology could be. I mean, I feel like people would have probably noticed that he looks like a younger Steven, but I mean, who would really put that connection together? So, I don't know. I keep spitballing stuff. It's just like I'm just so curious what it's going to be, what that reveal is going to be. Other than that, we had the whole situation with the Kim family. Obviously, Maddie's able to play a lot with her dad, and she's enjoying it. But the problem is now it is like he's starting to realize, like, yeah, we're having fun, but your mom won't talk to me. And it's just because she's trying to wrap her head around all of this, because she recognizes, like, right, you sound like my husband. You have my husband's memory. But she's like, I told you 2 years ago if you did this, which, to be fair, it's like he didn't really... Well, he did ultimately do this. I can't remember now. Did he actually just like straight up die and they did this anyway, or did he sign off on doing this? I don't remember. It's been a little while since I've seen the previous episode. Either way, she's like, I told you you weren't going to be human. Because it's like, right, we wouldn't be able to touch. Yes, like, sex is one aspect. Yes, it's not everything in a relationship, but it is part of the equation. So there's that aspect of we won't be able to touch, we won't be able to be intimate, but also like it's the thing of you're a machine. How can I tell if anything you're feeling is real? What if it's just you, like you remember what it's like to feel, but who's to say that's just not memories of feelings? Like, like, oh, I'm supposed to feel this way. I'm supposed to feel hurt. I'm supposed to feel happy. I'm supposed to feel love. I'm supposed to feel jealousy in this moment. Like, what if that's all it is? Ones and zeros, that there's no actual heart there. I don't think that's the case. I do believe there is the human heart element to it. I mean, that's how he was able to kind of, Laurie was able to reach out to him and break free either way, and he's also, because of what he is, he was able to kind of break the game a little bit. But it draws attention that he does that. So it's like, right, you can't do any mods, you can't do anything crazy, because if you draw too much attention, Maddie's like, I'm worried that the NSA will like roll up on us or something. But for him, it's just, he's heartbroken, because it's like, right, your mom won't see me, your mom won't talk to me. Luckily, Maddie's like, yeah, the game they play has come a long way since her dad died. It's been a couple years, so the game is now full VR, got like the haptic feedback and stuff like that to it. But Maddie tries, as she says later on when she's talking to Justine, trying to parent trap her parents, which Justine's like, what's Parent Trap? It's like, well, you've never seen the Parent Trap? Not even a Lindsay Lohan one? And it's like, no. Which I constantly forget that that's actually a reboot, the Parent Trap, the one with Lindsay Lohan. I did not realize that was a, I guess Disney kind of rebooted that. I don't even know if I've ever seen even bits and pieces of like the original. Either way, putting the tangents and all that aside, I also love the whole Justine thing of like, because she's around Maddie, like everyone kind of avoids her. I don't know if those are people who are going to like, oh, let's start some shit with Maddie. Oh, Justine's with her. It's like, oh, it's like, why? It's like, she's like, I'm a girl whose weight and IQ are over 115. So yeah, people are going to be intimidated by it. She's like, I'm not. It's like, yeah, then why did you ask me out of anybody to roll with you when a guy, like, to meet some strange guy? And she's like, oh shit. It's like, it's fine. It's whatever. Like, I'm judgmental like the rest of you. Problem is, I'm better than you guys at it. So, but I love the whole Justine thing of being like, man, you've got a pretty fucked up life for a happy kid. I'm into it. I love it. Because she was the one saying like, oh, doing the parent trap thing to your parents is going to blow up in your face. Because it's like, right. She knows what it's like to have like a separated family. She's like, yeah, but she basically was like, yeah, they're better divorced. Maddie's finally got her dad back. And she remembers the happiness that they all had together. And so for her, I forget it's only been 2 years, huh? But I guess I mean, leaps and bounds, gaming wise, I guess, and stuff like that. Because if I forget, it's only like, right, it's only been 2 years since her dad died. I feel like you would consider it like the VR and stuff, but it's like maybe the process was already there, but in the past 2 years it finalizes. And tensions and all that stuff. It doesn't really matter. I just kind of remember. I was like, oh yeah, because I kept being like, oh, how long has it been since her dad died? I kept thinking it's been years. I was like, no, it's only been 2 years since her dad died. Regardless. But it's that thing of, she wants to keep her family together so much because that's what she remembers, the picture perfect happy family they were. But it's like, yeah, things are different now. And Justine's coming from that perspective, and I kind of agree that perspective of like, yeah, you would want your parents to get together, stay together. You want that normalcy, especially now that it's like, right, your circumstances are complicated. Your dad came back from the dead to some extent, so of course you want things to kind of pick up where they were. But also, like, if things aren't working out, people should get divorced. You should not stay together if they're like, yeah, you can work on it, but if things aren't working, like, you know, sometimes it is probably better for everyone to go your separate ways because that way. You know, because eventually you just get more and more resentful, and it, you know, things could get even nastier later on. So, you know, either way, so that's kind of where Justine was coming from that perspective. But Maddie's about like, no, I'm gonna get my family together. She sets up this dinner, she's cooking it, but the problem is Ellen's immediately going on a date with Gabe after the fact, which I love. Later on, like David's super quiet. He's like, "Who's Gabe?" I was like, oh boy. Because he actually kind of went and called Ellen at work, which is kind of a big no-no. He's like, hey, just talk to me, but she won't talk to him. And so when Maddie sets up the date and everything, she's like, no, that thing isn't your father. He's not human, you know, and just kind of like, right, when you're ready to talk, she goes on her date with Gabe. That doesn't go well because it's like, right, she can't talk to him about what's going on because she's going to sound crazy. Then also, the last thing you want to do is get him involved in all of this, especially because it's like, it's still the awkward thing of, yeah, this is my husband, but it's not my husband. And especially when he like hijacked his watch and was playing like, oh, I'm still alive, turned on the zombie movie, made all these like electronic pictures of him pop up. It's like, Jesus. So that kind of blew up in her face. And then she finally sat down and talked to him about like, right, I mourned you for 2 years. Because that's the thing. Maddie, and understandable, like, right, I mean, she's also a kid, so she's entitled to be like this. But it is a thing of sometimes you get caught up in your own feelings. You never really take time to listen to what someone else is, really pay attention to what someone else is going through. And I think Maddie hearing for the first time, like, what her mom was going through, it's like, I mourned you for 2 years. I finally found the strength. Gave me the strength to finally move on. I needed to move on. That, you know, Gabe made me realize that you're the one that was buried, not me. So I had to move on from my life. Like, I could not live in that house, this house that was full of memories of you, that smelled of you. I couldn't do that anymore. So it is a thing of like, she has every right to move on. So I get the perspective of where Ellen's coming from with the whole situation. But then David was like, I should be allowed to move on too, because he's like, my feelings for you and Maddie, that love is what keeps me going. And if I don't have that, then I stop. So it's like, right, they're breaking up, but we do need to find some way forward. And obviously for Maddie, it's not what she wanted. She wanted them to be a big, happy family. But now it's like, yeah, there's an asterisk to it. And it's like, right, you can be a family and just, you know, I mean, your circumstances are more complicated than any other separated family. I even love them joking like, well, this has to be the most like awkward and weird breakup ever. It's like, yeah, Neil Armstrong, eat your heart out. It's like, yeah, here we are breaking up in a video game to my uploaded intelligence husband, his mind in a video game, and I'm in an avatar body based on a barbarian that my sister, like my daughter, like customized for me and stuff. It's super awkward situation. But them sitting around talking and laughing about things, despite the situation being what it is, I think Maddie still got what she wanted to some extent. It's like, right, having both of them at least talking and together. They might not be together, or I don't know if Maddie's thinking like, well, given enough time, maybe if they keep talking, maybe things will change, or maybe she's just happy having what she has. And it's like, that is something to be grateful of. Because your family might not be like the full unit it was, but things can't go back to the way they were. It's like, for her, it's like, for Ellen, it's like, we can keep talking. That way we can find our way, both of us can find our way forward with all of this, because he understands like you need to move forward and what it's been good for you to move forward, but it's like, right, this is what he needs to keep moving to not stop moving, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good